Hi, everyone. I'm Dominique Hamler, Executive Director of Los Angeles Outpatient Center, and we are exploring a topic today that has been lighting up the social media feeds lately, you guys. Let's talk about it. Narcissism. Can you say it with me? Narcissism. I know you know what that is. If you've been on TikTok, Instagram, you've probably seen countless videos and posts diagnosing people as narcissists, but what does that really mean? How do you separate fact from fiction? To help us get to the bottom of this, we have a very special guest with us, LAOP's very own Yami Rivas. Yay, give her a hand. Welcome her, you guys. Yami is a primary therapist here at LAOP. She works very closely with clients dealing with various mental health issues, including narcissism. Yami, could you introduce yourself to our audience?
My name is Yami Rivas, licensed marriage and family therapist here at LAOP. Been a therapist for a little over 10 years, and I'm excited to be here.
You know, we need to pick your brain today, okay? She's our subject matter expert, you guys. Get your pens, get your notebooks, get your tablets, whatever you need. Take notes because it's about to go down, okay? Let's get into it. So, Yami, can we talk about maybe just a general overview of what narcissism is? Because I know I've been guilty of using the term very loosely, if you will. So maybe just give us a general overview.
So it is a very complicated topic because the word is used a lot, right?
Right.
So it's used a lot, but so narcissistic personality disorder also, it's very complicated to diagnose.
Right.
Because typically people with narcissistic personality disorder don't seek out treatment, right? And so what happens is usually their relatives end up in treatment. So it's either a partner, a child of a narcissistic person. So it's more of a personality trait, or a diagnosis more of a personality, right? Type.
I see.
Rather than like a personality disorder, because it's difficult to diagnose.
Right.
So what it consists of is just a combination of personality traits, not just, let's say they're entitled or selfish, right? Those are parts of it, but it's a combination of personality traits that impact people around them significantly.
Wow.
So not one trait, right? If somebody's entitled,
Right.
that wouldn't classify somebody as somebody with a personality disorder, or narcissistic personality type, but the combination of them. So they have to have a lot of the traits, and ultimately what would really classify somebody like that is the impact they have on the people around them. Right. It's so distressing that those people end up in therapy.
That is incredible. That's like dropping a bomb right in the middle of the family dynamic. Any type of relationship sounds like.
Yeah.
That is huge, you guys. So can we talk about some of the common symptoms? You kind of touched on a little bit, but maybe some of the common symptoms of narcissism that people can be aware of. Like, what are you looking for when you're like, that person might be narcissistic? Because I understand you saying it's the traits, it's the characteristics. Yeah. It's not, oh, you have NPD, you have narcissism, right?
Yeah. I would say the big thing is consistent inconsistencies.
Okay.
Right? So you meet up with somebody and they're in a good place, they're super jolly, happy, and then 5 minutes later, or maybe the next time you see them, they're completely different. You don't know how they're going to be. They're inconsistent. In a child's home, so somebody who is a child living with a parent this way, it causes significant emotional damage, and damages like the nervous system. So the person has physical symptoms because they don't know consistency in the home. They don't know, just a typical home, parents are consistently loving, right? And maybe they'll discipline and give consequences. But in a home with a narcissistic parent, what happens is the inconsistency keeps kids feeling doubt and fear constantly. So growing up in a home that way with doubt and fear causes significant emotional damage long-term for people. So those are the people that we typically see in treatment.
My goodness.
With significant symptoms, anxiety, depression.
That means so much to hear, because we throw around that term, you guys, emotional damage, but Yami is literally laying down the law and showing you what that looks like in the home, what that feels like. And you said it attacks the nervous system.
The nervous system, yeah.
Is narcissism classified as a personality disorder?
So again, I think it's complicated to diagnose a personality disorder because they don't typically tend to come to treatment.
Right.
It's usually everyone else's fault. So if somebody, let's say you hurt my feelings, you said something or that didn't make me feel good, they'd say, well, it's your fault for feeling that way. Right? It's your fault for feeling that way. So they don't typically end up in treatment unless they're court mandated.
Okay.
Or they're losing everything.
Right.
Their wife is done, she's leaving. So then they'll tend to be like, okay, fine, I'll go. And then it's difficult even in treatment for therapists to work with them because of, not taking responsibility for their actions.
Right. No accountability.
No accountability.
And then you said they're not going to treatment. They're not electing to do better for themselves and try to grow, emotionally and, be better persons.
And the reason is the empathy part, right? So they're lacking empathy. So some of the traits, they're lacking empathy.
Wow.
And because of it, they can't really read what they're doing to others or how they're making them feel. But they also don't have a concept of who they are.
Oh,
because
wow.
in order for us to have a concept of who we are, we have to kind of understand how we make others feel.
Right.
They don't have that ability to empathize with others.
Wow. So they're projecting their negative emotions on someone else, and then there's no accountability, and then no awareness, sounds like, even of what they're doing, when you say the empathy piece, right?
Yeah.
That's just having that general concern for others, right? They don't have that.
No.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Are there different types of narcissism? Do they have like different styles, different types? What would you say?
Yeah, so there's definitely a spectrum, right?
Okay.
So you have the malignant narcissist who is dangerous. They can hurt you. And those are, I think, are typically the one that people talk about.
Okay.
The malignant narcissist who usually can cause harm. There's someone who maybe after a divorce, they will try to take everything from you. They will try to take your children, use your children against you. But then there's other kinds like the victimized narcissist, right? So, everyone hurts me. My parents hurt me. When you have parents who pay everything for them, they're adults and they're like, my parents don't do enough for me.
Right.
The world is out to get me. So they're victimized, right? So naturally, someone who's very empathic will end up in a relationship with somebody like that and want to save them all the time, right?
Right.
All the time. But at some point, you become the person who's victimizing them because they blame you for all of their troubles and things like that. So it's a spectrum of it. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the malignant ones, but not the ones that are more subtle, less aggressive. And those are a lot more complicated because they are passive aggressive.
Okay.
And so they make people feel intense inside, but it's not in an aggressive form, right? It's subtle messages like, let me help you with that because you don't really know how to do it right, right? And so they come off as somebody who's trying to help you.
Right.
They're being so kind, right? And that's where people miss the signs early on. That's one of the traits where you think somebody's gonna help you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why are you wearing that? Let me choose something out for you.
Okay.
Or why did you eat that? That's not, let me get you something else. Right? So it sounds nice.
Yeah.
But it's making someone feel like they don't know how to make basic decisions for themselves.
Wow.
And it starts that way. And then like in a romantic relationship, it would start that way. And then the person has very little confidence in themselves and they wonder like, why don't they leave this relationship, right? Well, they wouldn't because their self-esteem is so low now. The confidence in self about being able to make simple decisions is gone because the person has broken them down so much.
Right.
And so if you think about a parent and a child growing up with a parent that way, it's like, oh, no, you can't wear that. You have to wear something else, right? Or, oh, why did you make that joke? That wasn't funny. And so a child is broken down for all of who they are, their personality, traits. When the parent does it constantly in the home, then you have an adult who's very insecure, but more importantly, a fear of being themselves and trusting themselves because the parents never allowed them to trust themselves and their emotions and make decisions.
Right. I can see that. So I'm just going to recap here. So we talked about how it affects your nervous system. Now you're telling me that your self-esteem is on the line, which again, you guys, your self-esteem is your authentic self, who you are as a person. And this person is literally attacking that, your entire being. So let's try to clear up some misconceptions with narcissism. What are some of the common misconceptions, would you say?
I think a big one would be that people believe that they can change.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's like, oh, if we get them to treatment, how do I get my partner who's very narcissistic to come to treatment so I can help them change? Because it's a personality disorder, it's their personality. So it's really difficult to change someone's personality. Right. So what happens many times is they could pretend to make a change. But typically because of the lack of empathy and the fear of rejection that they also have, they don't really change. The empathy portion, sometimes they know it cognitively, so they know how to pretend to have empathy. But they don't naturally feel empathy. So that's when it gets complicated because, in order to protect your partner, you would have to think or feel, oh, if I do this, it's going to harm my partner or it's going to harm my children. Let me not do this. But without that piece, they harm the people around them all the time. They can, again, cognitively understand it and what they can do. They can pretend to have empathy to get what they want, but actually feeling it, they don't. And so how do you help them change that part, right? It takes a lot of work, and they would have to want that.
I was going to say the willingness has to be there too, right? The person, like I can drag my loved one to therapy, but if they're not willing to undergo the treatment, follow the advisement, the treatment plan, then what are we really doing? Right? And I feel like that's probably the case a lot of times when you said that ultimatum is given and, okay, I'll go to treatment because I don't want to lose everything.
Yeah. When I mention it to clients and I say they're typically people who would never go to therapy because they think everyone else is the problem. And I bring it up in groups, let's say with a lot of clients in the room who have a parent this way, and I ask the question, do your parents go to therapy? Has any one of your parents who has caused you distress gone to therapy? And everybody laughs and like, nope, never. They would never.
So they already know that this is not the type of person that's going to go to therapy. So
yeah, once they've identified that their parent has narcissistic traits and we dive into dissecting their behaviors and they start to understand that this is what it was, that their symptoms are due to growing up in a home with somebody who was inconsistent, grandiose, impacted their self-esteem significantly, they can see the symptoms. And then they also say like, no, they would never. My parent would never come to therapy.
But yet and still, as you said before, the people around them are the ones that are majorly impacted. And this is why it's so important to pay attention to the signs, like Yami is informing you of, you guys, making sure that you know how you're feeling inside too. Maybe, doing a self-check and just making sure that, how am I feeling in this relationship? What professionals would it take? I know someone such as yourself, you're in the professional spectrum to diagnose. What else would this take to have someone diagnosed?
Well, licensed marriage and family therapist, any licensed professional can diagnose. But I would suggest that maybe a psychologist with a more thorough assessment process because it's difficult to diagnose. It's a thorough assessment. Again, it's difficult to diagnose because they don't come to treatment and you can't diagnose someone based on someone else's description of it, right? Like, oh, my partner has this, and this, right? All these different traits. You can't diagnose based on what they're saying. So the person has to come to treatment and go through a thorough evaluation of their symptoms in order to diagnose. So typically, again, it's ordered that they would come to psychological evaluation and have a personality disorder diagnosis. But many times it's difficult to have them in the room. But yes, a licensed professional or a psychologist, a psychiatrist can diagnose personality disorders.
Perfect. Okay, you guys got that right. No diagnosing. It sounds like what we need you to do is come to therapy and take care of your own emotional needs, right?
Absolutely.
So scratch it off your list. Do you have any real life scenarios where recognizing, the behaviors of narcissism made a difference in treatment?
Absolutely. I have so many.
I believe it.
I will say maybe about 90% of my clients have someone like this in their life. So I have somebody recently who I worked with who has been in treatment for 10 years.
Okay.
And in individual therapy. And while here, they discovered they had a mother who was narcissistic.
Wow.
And they had never identified how much those traits had impacted their nervous system, right? By the panic attacks frequently, a lot of anxiety, depressed moods, not understanding why. They've realized in treatment, understanding these traits, that it was that relationship and the continuing seeking validation from this person in their life, especially if it's your mom, right? It's your mother and you're continuing to go back and seek validation from this person and they cannot give it to you. They just can't because of the poor empathy and the personality traits. But definitely when once addressed, they recognize, wait, this panic disorder is completely normal based on all the things that I have been through. This anxiety is completely normal based on, the things I went through as a child, my symptoms, my emotions that were not validated ever. And so once going back to doing child work and validating those feelings with those memories that they experienced in their childhood, the symptoms naturally decrease.
My goodness.
A significant symptom decrease. Because they recognize, wait, there's nothing wrong with me. This is an appropriate response to the way I grew up with this person with these symptoms. And then it's easy to recognize, oh, wait, I have a best friend this way. Who I've allowed in my life for, 20 years. Oh, I have this coworker and I just have allowed her in my life for so long, who also has very similar traits, right? There's something called cognitive dissonance, which is like your body's response to something and your brain not matching it, right? So something like a parent says, I love you so much. I love you so much. And then the child feels like, well, why don't I feel it? Right? There's this cognitive dissonance and they feel guilty for not feeling what this other person is saying, but I love you so much, right? Why don't I feel it? There's something wrong with me. And there isn't. They don't feel it because of the traits the other person is presenting, right? Maybe they belittled you 5 seconds ago and you had an emotion and your mom said, stop crying. And then they say, but I love you so much. And so that cognitive dissonance is what really impacts people's nervous system. And they don't know how to trust themselves. Right. So you have people who are in a romantic relationship this way, where they feel they can't trust their emotional response to things. So there's a doubt. So I'm feeling anxious and there's something wrong with me because I'm anxious, and they can't correlate that to what someone else just did to them. And so they take responsibility for their emotional response, say there's something wrong with me for feeling anxious, rather than saying, wait, they just hurt my feelings. What they said was inappropriate and it hurt me and it made me feel anxious. So that's the cognitive dissonance, that your brain thinks something like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. And your body has an emotional response like anger, sadness, fear, anxiety based on what somebody just said to you. And so that I see a lot in treatment with most of my clients. And so what I try to help them do is come back to their bodies. And feel their emotions. What did that make you feel? Right. And so then they go off into the world, and when somebody makes them feel a particular way, now they can set boundaries, because we can talk about boundaries. We can talk about, there's so many different tips that we give our clients, coping skills. But when you don't know how you're feeling, because the adults in your life when you were a kid said, stop feeling that. Then you don't trust yourself with these emotions. You don't know when to set boundaries. You don't know when to use coping skills, unless, again, you're in your body and you're listening to your body. So that cognitive dissonance makes a lot of changes for clients in the room when they're able to recognize, wait, no, my feelings are valid. So I have to change my thoughts about it. I can't judge myself for feeling this emotional response.
The way you feel. I mean, it's almost like you are losing sense of self, right? Because someone's dumping their emotional garbage on you, and it's true. As humans, we internalize things. We tend to say, okay, well, I need to do something better, but you're teaching them, not in addition to the coping skills, come back to self, as you said. Feel your emotions, because that's the hard part, you guys, feeling what you feel. And you said validating it, right? Just
validating
okay,
it
you
for
feel
self.
it. That's incredible. That's incredible. That's a good tip, you guys. How can you tell if you're dating a narcissist? It's got to be some signs, right? Something we can look for, right? Okay.
There's definitely signs.
All right.
So typically they do something called love bombing.
Yeah. Heard of that.
So early on, they present great, right?
Oh, yeah.
They give you everything you wanted. You check off all the boxes, right? And so they are consistent for some time. They can be consistent for some time.
Okay.
So sometimes you won't pick it up.
I see.
And that's okay.
Right.
Because then people are in a relationship with a narcissist and like, how did I not see the signs? Well, sometimes they're really good.
Okay.
They're really good at presenting who you want.
Okay.
Right. I think it's okay though, when you get into a relationship with someone like this, to seek out treatment, to be able to remove yourself, because what happens in the brain is that you become addicted to them in some ways, right? You become addicted to the love bombing. And then what happens is they remove that quickly.
Okay.
So once they've given you all these different nice experiences, then they pull it away. So they may give you the silent treatment for some time.
My goodness.
They may disappear for a little while, right? So they have these other traits that they show you, and it's important to at that point recognize that it may be difficult for you to remove yourself from that relationship. So what happens, people are now seeking the next high, right? That person who I once met is there somewhere. So how do I get that person back? Maybe if I change the way I look, maybe if I read him better and understand him a little better, or maybe it's his trauma. Maybe if I can change a few things and be there for him a little bit more, him or her, because women also can have these traits.
Totally.
And waiting for those signs. I mean, if you see those signs, to be kind to yourself and just seek out treatment, because it's not easy to remove yourself from a relationship like that once you're in there, because they've done the damage in your brain. They've shown you, right? Best case scenario, maybe something you always dreamed of, and they were that for a little while. And then they're no longer that. And so you're seeking that again. So to just be kind to yourself and say, well, maybe I did fall for someone like this. Let me see what I can do to go and get treatment.
Very good. So you guys, you're not stuck. You're not stuck in these relationships. There is a way out. But I hear you saying being kind to yourself, right? Because we'll beat ourselves up. I did not see it. Oh, he was buying me roses every day. She was buying me takeout every day. I didn't notice the signs, but it's okay, right? Because you can do something for yourself to heal yourself. I think that's the most important thing.
Because also a healthy relationship would present like that in some ways also, right? A healthy relationship from the beginning, someone treats you with kindness, respect, they bring you flowers. But in a narcissistic relationship, where somebody has those traits, they will do that in the beginning. So naturally you would feel like, this person is great for me, right? So you may miss the signs. Sometimes they'll show you signs how they treat others, right? They're really nice to you, but you go out to dinner and how they talk about the waiter or how they treat somebody, next to them. Those are signs. The grandiosity, they feel they're better than other people. The entitlement, and stuff. Those things are signs, but sometimes they may not have those.
May not have them. Okay, story time. So I was dating this guy, and it was like date number 2, and that's what I observed. We were at a restaurant, and we had like a little time crunch on how long we can meet, because it was in the middle of the day, and so I ordered what he asked for over the phone. Then when the waiter, it was somebody that I knew because I frequented the restaurant. And when she brought out, the dish that he'd ordered, he looked at her like she brought him a poo-poo platter. And I was like, what's going on here? Like, I'm observing. And he was so rude to her, Yami. He was so, I was embarrassed. I could have climbed under the table. I even called the restaurant the next day to apologize to her. That's how bad it was. And so what did I do?
Never again.
Cut him off. because I noticed that. I made me so uncomfortable,
Yeah.
Yami. I was like, no, I can't be with someone. They never treated me that way, right? He was never treating me that way, but I did observe that, and I was like, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
feel free to cut it off, you guys, but still seek treatment.
Yeah, no, definitely cut it off when you
Yeah.
see the signs, because it's very unlikely that they are going to change. And if they treat someone else this way,
Right.
they're likely going to turn on you someday.
Sure,
So,
sure.
yeah, it is important. And also another thing is that we tend to date people who are similar. So once you've dated somebody who's narcissistic,
Yeah.
what happens many times is that your brain is accustomed to the reward system, right? So they're so charming
Right.
in the beginning, and then they pull back. And so it's almost like a slot machine, right? You win,
Yeah.
and then that keeps you there. You
Yeah.
lose,
Yeah,
waiting
yeah.
for the next win.
Right.
And so what happens, the brain gets accustomed to that. And so naturally you date somebody else that way. You date somebody else who's like this because you want the next high.
That's
And then
it.
you're also chemicals being released when they withhold that love. And so there's chemicals being released when you don't feel happy, when you feel scared, when you feel nervous, walking
Yeah.
on eggshells.
Yeah.
And so your brain becomes accustomed to the releases when they're treating you well,
Right.
and the releases when they're withholding love from you and you feel scared and nervous and
Wow.
anxious. So being mindful of that also, because you're likely to go into another relationship that is very, very similar.
Right, right, because it feels normal to
It
you.
feels normal.
It's been normalized in your brain, in your nervous system, in your body. So you're just thinking, okay, I'm moving on to the next person that's going to take care of me and be safe, when it's actually not.
Yeah.
That is manipulation on a whole nother level,
Yeah.
Yami. That's what I see as you're describing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a level of control, which when you said the hormonal release, so it's almost like you don't even have control
You
anymore,
don't, yeah.
right? Because they're controlling the narrative.
Yeah.
So,
And that's why I say compassion and being kind to yourself is the way to get better and leave a relationship, because that's the one thing they're withholding from you.
Right.
They making you feel small. They're withholding love from you.
Right.
And so then you don't know how to give it to yourself. And maybe there's stories, I've heard many stories, right? Somebody's so strong and confident, and it's what the narcissist likes.
They're looking for that.
They're looking for that because they also don't have a self-esteem. And so they surround themselves with people that uplift them, right? Make them feel good about themselves.
Right.
So that person takes that almost from you. So then they take your self-esteem. It's really difficult to get out of those relationships. So the way to get out, self-love, self-compassion.
Yes, for sure. And that's hard too, right? Because again, you're blaming yourself because you're not good enough. You're not cutting it with this person in a relationship. That's why it's important for this awareness. You guys, it's really important for you guys to take care of yourselves, to love yourself, keep your confidence, keep your light on. You know what I mean? It's hard when someone snuffs out that light,
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, why did I let that happen? Again, right? We're blaming ourselves.
Which is exactly what they make you believe, that there's something wrong with you. So why did I let that happen? How did I not see the signs? That's exactly the pattern that's going to keep you in those kinds of relationships.
Right.
But if you're able to shift it and say, it's okay, I'm going to learn from this. I'm a great human being. I try my best. I love big. If anything, a lot of empathy or high empathy for someone is a great quality, and it should not be turned against you, right? Like maybe I was too soft, maybe I was too loving, maybe I should be tough on everybody and not let anyone in. I would say that's not the solution. I would say it was just the wrong person.
Sure.
You still want to have a big heart, you still want to be very empathetic and loving,
right?
A lot more towards self and then towards others, and find the right person, right? There are people with narcissistic traits, many of them, sadly,
right?
But there's also people who don't have those traits. There are a lot of people who are very empathic, very loving, very caring. We see them all the time in treatment.
Right.
You just have to find someone like that. Both kinds of people exist. And that's a hard pill to swallow. I think some people don't want to believe that the people who are narcissistic exist. It's almost like it's sad to believe that there's people out there in the world who have no empathy and they just hurt people and very manipulative. But they do exist. They exist, right?
100%.
And we can recognize have empathy for them, but we want to move and go the other way.
That's right. Exit stage left, guys.
Go the other way.
You don't have to stay in it. And I was going to say something too that's important when you're getting out of the relationship. I think it's important to be in the hands of someone such as yourself, a licensed therapist, because I even heard you giving out those positive affirmations, positive self-talk, techniques and strategies you can use, because it's like you have to build yourself back up again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're escaping these relationships, you're torn down, you're beaten down, you're lost in translation, if you will. You don't have a sense of self. You don't have that moral compass kind of guiding you because, like I said, you can't trust yourself anymore. So I think it's really important, you guys, to get in a structured environment so you can safely leave these relationships and not repeat the pattern, because that's something else too. When you're repeating the pattern, you're just depleting yourself repeatedly, because these people, they don't care. I'm sorry. They don't care about how you feel. They don't care about the emotional damage, the manipulation. That's their MO. I've even heard it described as supply, like they need supply from you. That's what they need from you. And you're just depleting yourself because the game is they're making you feel like you need to go harder. You need to do more. You need to be better.
Yeah.
As we continue to talk about relationships, I just had one more question. If someone's partner maybe, have been identified or diagnosed as a narcissist, is it still possible to be in a healthy relationship with someone like that?
So with my clients who have a parent this way, I help them through building a healthy relationship with their parent, right?
Okay.
This is your mom, this is your dad. How do you set boundaries? Give them limited access to your children, because a lot of times they try to triangulate you with your children, which means create instability in a relationship with your children or with other people in your life. So they want to set clear boundaries. And also narcissists have positive traits as parents. Sometimes they're very big on gift giving. Or they will come over and, and they're very charming, so they could be very fun. And I say, if it's your parent, let's figure out a way to have a relationship with them and accept their gifts, enjoy their times when they're in a good place. When they're not in a good place, you set boundaries, say, okay, I'll talk to you another day. I have to go now. With a romantic relationship, it's a lot more complicated. You can have a somewhat healthy relationship if you choose not to leave, but the distress is there, right? If you're okay living with that emotional distress because they find different ways to make you feel intense inside, then you can stay in that kind of relationship for a long time. I think as people go into treatment and get healthier and start challenging the irrational thoughts and the negative self-views that this person causes in them, they'll likely not want to stay, right? You start challenging, wait, no, I'm not stupid. Wait, no, I'm not incompetent. Wait, I'm not naive, or, all these different messages they get. They start believing in themselves and they wouldn't naturally stay, which is the goal, right? That they at some point leave. I am a marriage and family therapist, so I would never recommend people divorcing. I love preserving the family, keeping marriages, working through a lot of their issues.
That's right.
When it is a person who is narcissistic, though, I think many times divorce is the best option. Because of the emotional damage they cause to a person. So it is really difficult to have good mental health and be in a relationship like this, unfortunately. And there are people out in the world who are just like you, who have a beautiful big heart, and they need you.
That's right. And you don't want to damage that. You don't want to be jaded because you're in this relationship and you're miserable, right? So seek treatment is the thing. Seek help if you want professional help. Yami is here at LAOP. This is her specialty, you guys. She's here to support you. This is really good information, because I just can't help but go back to the part with the manipulation. And with that piece, that's going to make it very hard for you to really gain a sense of self again, right? And really understand where you are. And I know the other thing that I read about this type of dynamic is the isolation part, that they isolate you, right? They pull you away from the people that care about you, that kind of like your sounding boards. And they're like, girl, what are you doing?
Your support system will naturally challenge those beliefs that they make you
Right.
believe about yourself, like you're incompetent or you're not that smart. And then you go out and, oh my God, I love that you said that, or oh my gosh,
Right.
I love that tip, I'm going to, or you're so smart, or they'll just challenge it naturally, or they laugh with you, smile with you. It is automatically challenge all the things they make you believe about yourself in isolation.
Right.
I have a client who is married to somebody like this, and when I meet with her and she hasn't socialized, it's so difficult to challenge all the negative beliefs. When she's gone out and socialized, she's like, yeah, he was making me feel this way because he said this and this.
Right.
But when she's not socializing,
Right.
he can make her believe whatever he wants about herself.
Right.
So yeah, socializing is very important.
Right. Keeping it social. Is that a form of gaslighting, what you're talking about, when they're making you feel, bad about yourself, even though, how do you feel about that?
So let's say you made me feel hurt when you said this one thing to me.
Right.
And then they'll say, well, there's something wrong with you for feeling that. You shouldn't, you're too sensitive. Right? It's your fault for feeling this. It's not my fault for what I did.
Right.
It's your fault. Or maybe they cheated, right? And they say you're hurt because they cheated, and they say, well, it was your fault because you weren't, I don't know, sleeping with me enough, or you weren't giving me enough attention, or you just don't dress up nice anymore, or whatever it is, right? And maybe somebody's not dressing up nicely anymore because they don't believe in themselves anymore, because you've broken me down to the point where I can't even take a shower anymore. So it could be that extreme where someone who's narcissistic breaks you down to the point where people don't even shower anymore.
Wow.
They just don't believe in themselves. Yeah, there's so much to cover on this topic.
It's just broad.
It's a broad topic.
And it goes down many trails and trails. We want to thank you so much, Yami, for just spreading that awareness and insight. I want to thank you guys, our audience, for joining us. And I know these insights are going to help you do better for yourself. Let's start there. Start with loving yourself, right? And understanding narcissism and how to handle it in your daily life, because it affects us. We learned today that it's affecting the day-to-day. So you're not crazy. What you're feeling is real, right? And let's get down to it and get a better understanding of why you feel what you feel. Huge thank you to Yami for being such an incredible guest and a fantastic therapist here at LAOP. Let's talk about that. She is really helping people to get your life back, your expertise, your compassion. You're making a difference in our community, and we appreciate you. All right, you guys, if you have any more questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in future episodes, leave them in the comments below. And to learn more about our services here at LAOP, visit laopcenter.com. See you next time. Thank you, guys.